So we have every different type of generation here on stage right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce each generation. They're going to say their name, what generation they're from. As you guys heard, my name is Nate, and I'm part of Generation Z. You know, I'm not going to lie, I was a little hurt when I heard this, because I was born in 99, and I thought I was a post-millennial. So I found out the right generation when I did this, and I'm living with it. I love you guys. Generation Z is my crew. Yes, living with it. But all right, so we have this power couple, this amazing couple right here next to me. Yes, amazing couple. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves and say what generation that you are from.
So my name is Isaac Mayava, and I'm with the Millennials. What's
Come on.
up? Where the Millennials
Any
at?
millennials in the place? Yes.
My name is Mandy. I'm also a millennial.
Come on. We got a lot more millennials this experience. Yeah, you guys got some support. Yeah. All right, I have the privilege and honor to introduce my mother to you guys. Hey. My very own mom. Man, when's the last time we've been on stage together? When we were leading worship together? When I was a kid? You don't remember? All right, that's messed up. That's messed up. All right, Mom, why don't you introduce yourself and let the crowd know what generation you're from?
My name is Dora Perez, and I'm a few years shy of a millennial.
Oh, okay, okay. How'd put it out
just
there?
Just a few, but I'm Generation X.
Yes, Gen X, Gen X. All right, so now to the man with the cleanest outfit on stage.
Oh, dang.
Man, I tell him every day, I can only hope to look as good as he does every day. So, Mr. Small, why don't you introduce yourself and let the crowd know which generation you're from?
My name is Stephen Small.
Come on.
I'm like double old school.
Oh, come on.
Baby
come on. Yeah.
boomer.
Yeah.
Right at the tail
Okay.
end. I know
Yes,
y'all
sir.
out there, though. Hi.
Okay. So I'm very unfamiliar with baby boomer. Can you elaborate?
See, that's a very tricky situation. See, what happened was at the end of World War II, when the soldiers came back home,
They started booming.
war,
Baby started booming.
things happened.
Okay.
Baby showed up.
I heard a lot of them too.
A few.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. Well, like we said, we are a generations panel, and so we all grew up with different types of slang that we used growing up. The words your kids probably say isn't the same words you grew up saying, and the words you say, your kids are probably looking at you really weird, like, what, Mom, we don't say that no more. So I'm kind of curious as to what each generation grew up saying. So we're going to play a game real quick. We're going to call it Guess That Slang. And so we're going to start with Mr. Steve here. Why don't you tell the crowd a slang word that you used in your generation growing up?
I could have gone for the easy ones, but I want to give one that probably some of you've never heard. Cosmic.
Cosmic.
Let's go.
Yeah. Can you use it in a sentence, please?
Man, that is cosmic.
Cosmic.
Hey, we gotta bring that back.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm
hashtag cosmic.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm really vibing with these baby boomers. Yeah. All right, Mom. What was the slang word that you used growing up?
Don't have a cow.
Don't have a cow. Do you guys know what that means? Don't have a cow.
Come on.
Serious?
Serious.
Serious, like no cap.
Like no cap.
Okay.
Facts.
Facts, no printer.
Facts.
Yeah.
No printer.
All right. So let's go to the millennials. And I'm interested to see, because you guys, I feel like you guys grew up in different slang words, because you grew up country and you grew up hood. So I'm kind of interested. So why don't you guys tell the crowd what slang words you guys use?
When I was growing up, we used to say that's tight.
That's tight. And you guys still say that's tight? Yeah? All right, some. All right.
So when I was growing up, we used to call people out and be like, bro, you selling wolf tickets.
Wolf tickets.
Hey, you selling wolf
Yo.
tickets.
All right.
Hey, you wolfing right now.
Can I get a definition, please? Because
That means you calling somebody out when you think that they're lying. They're telling a super extravagant story. Like, bro, you're selling me wolf tickets right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right. So, Gen Z, y'all know what's up. We say, it's bussin'. It's bussin'. Shee! Yes, sir. So you probably hear on the pulpit a lot of more Gen Z language and grammar because our pastor is only 31. Like, he probably barely makes the cut for Gen Z too. Our church is only 4 years old. And the way we do worship and our culture is just so energetic and so vibrant that we might seem like a very young church, even though we are very diverse.
Right.
And so, Mr. Small, I'm really curious because, I mean, baby boomer, let's accept the fact. You are the oldest one here. And being the oldest one here, I remember when we would serve on production together, and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to carry all this weight. Like, I gotta carry this guy right now. And when we would lift the thing to put the LED wall on, you would lift me up and my feet would be dangling. And you would just have so much energy. And when I would talk to you, you spoke with so much wisdom. And I just remember thinking sometimes, man, I really hope that I am like him when I'm older. With so much wisdom, so much energy, still in the church. Because it is just so amazing what I have seen. And I'm so curious, and I'm sure the crowd is curious, what advice can you give me and other people on how you're involved?
That's an interesting question. I grew up in the church in the Bay Area. Probably never heard of this place, Marin City. Right next to Sausalito. We had about 60 people in the church. The city really wasn't even supposed to be there. It was built for building of the warships in World War II. That's all it was for. It was temporary housing was supposed to go away. They didn't even build housing, permanent housing, until the 60s. So I grew up in this little small town in Marin City. Everybody in the church was older, and the people who did things were older, 60-year-old keyboard player, you know. We didn't really do piano. We did piano. We had the organ going, but drums and keyboards, or drums and guitar, I wasn't holy yet.
Come on, somebody. I would die.
Yeah. That wasn't holy yet, not where we were.
Yeah.
You know. We were the holy rollers. We were down on the floor. We was up late at night.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was when I grew up. See, I grew up in a whole different culture than what I see here.
Wow.
You know, when I got here, I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What have I walked into? Matter of fact, it was my daughter, Chantel, who sings on the worship team, that came to the church before I did.
Yeah.
Right? She's like, Dad, you got to check this out.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, right. We'll get on that. And she'd come back and go, Dad, really, it's really good. You got to check this out. So my wife went, and she came back, and she was like, well, you make up your own mind, but you got to check this out.
Come on.
So about the third time I came down and I checked it out. The first thing I noticed when I pulled up into the parking lot was the people were so friendly.
Yeah. Come on.
They were so receiving.
Yeah.
And then I also noticed I was the oldest one in the crowd. I walked in the door, I'm like, salt and pepper? Most of the pepper is gone. It's just pretty much salt going on now. So I'm like, okay, God, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to go in and walk in the surface. I walked in, got into the door, and I was like, so I had to turn around, right back to the car, and get my cane. I'm kidding, I don't use a cane. But when I came into the building, I saw how organized things were. I saw different, I love it, there were different nationalities, there were different age groups in here, but I still did not see what I would do. See, I'm coming from playing drums every service for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I move over here, and it's like they've got it going on. This worship team is killing. I'm like, God, I don't know where I fit in. So what I did was I went to E101, but you got to go to E101 or just Essentials now, but you got to get in there. So I went to E101, then I started serving with the production team. And I got busy on the production team. You know, and with myself at my age, I'm working on the production team. I'm half dead at night, but I'm working on the production team. And I get up in the morning and be here at 6, and we were still finished up that Sunday morning.
Yeah.
When Pastor asked me, hey, would you mind being on the Generations team? I said, yeah. And the first thing that came to my mind was Moses.
Come on.
Moses is an interesting story because Moses was born at a time that it was dangerous for him to even be born. Moses had to be put in a basket and then sent down the river just to save his life. He goes down the river, he gets picked up by royalty. He lives in the palace under royalty in a different culture. It was not even supposed to be where he's from. He was a Hebrew, but he's growing up in Egypt. Right, so now you got this young man that's growing up in a different culture than where he is supposed to be.
Yeah.
A lot of us have had that experience where we've grown up in places that we're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
But Moses grows up in this culture, and when he gets older, he finds out that he is actually Hebrew. Right. And when he finds out that he's actually Hebrew, he sees a centurion or a soldier killing or beating one of his fellow men. So he decides, hey, I know I'm supposed to do something about this, right? And some of us get that. We get that half plan, and then we run off. But he decides he's going to go out. He goes out and he kills the soldier, and he buries the man in the sand.
Yeah.
And a lot of us in our lives have taken something that we buried it, killed it, and buried it in the sand. And we don't want those things to be found or discovered. So what we do is we run. Wow. Moses ran all the way into Midian. Moses ran for 40 years. So now we got a man who kills a man and at 40 years old, then runs into the wilderness for another 40 years. Yeah. And a lot of us have done things that we run.
Yeah.
And we run for 40 years into something else.
Wow.
Now Moses is out there, he gets a family, he's got kids, and he's watching sheep.
Yeah.
Now this is the funny thing about it. Moses was always called to watch sheep. He was called to watch people's sheep.
Oh, come
But
on.
he's out there watching wolves' sheep. Now, while he's daily walking, he's doing his thing, and he's taking care of his family, and he's taking care of his wife, and he's a part of the village. He's going by, and he sees an anomaly in the mountain. Now, he sees this anomaly in the mountain, and he doesn't do anything about it. See, and a lot of times we get like this. We will see that thing that God wants us to do, and we'll look at it.
Wow.
Woo! We'll look at it. We'll run around it. We'll check it out, but we won't go after it. Wow. Now, God didn't put this thing in an easy place. God stuck this thing up in the mountain. You got an 80-year-old man with something up on the mountain that he knows he's got to go see. Wow. Some people look at the mountain and go, that's too much. Right. That's too much. God, I know you want me to go there, but that's too much. Yeah. But Moses took off and went up the mountain. And as Moses went up the mountain, he gets up to the anomaly, and he notices there's a bush. Yeah. And the bush is on fire. Yeah. Wow. But it's not being consumed. And the thing about it is that sometimes when God gets on you, he will put you on fire, but he will not consume you. Woo. He's not going to burn you up. Not going to burn you out. But he's going to put you definitely on fire. And out of this, God calls Moses by name. See, a lot of times we're waiting for somebody to check us out or to call us, but you've already been called by name.
Come on.
God already called you. God already called you. God already called you.
Come on.
And you're wondering, what am I supposed to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to do this? And God's already called you.
Wow.
So while Moses is 80 years old in the mountain, when some of us at 50, 60, starting to shut it down. Wow. Some of us even at 16, 17, starting to shut it down. God, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm too old for this. I don't know. I don't have the experience. I can't speak the way you want me to. I can't talk the way you want to. So I'm going to shut this thing down. But God gave him a mission. At 80 years old, God gave him a mission. Yeah. See, and then when God called you, he doesn't just call you for anything. He gives you a mission. That's right. Gives you a calling.
Yeah.
And at that time, Moses didn't even know what the calling is. Moses had to do another 40 years. Wow. He had to go back down into Israel, into a culture that he wasn't really even a part of. He's been in and out of, he's been around it, he's seen it, but he had to go back into that culture and bring them out of Israel. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy. God sent 10 plagues through there to bring the people out of Israel, out of Egypt at that time. So, whatever it might be, whatever you're thinking, God's got a plan. Yeah. God's got a calling.
Yeah.
It's not time to shut it down. Yeah. It's not time to just let it go.
Come on.
It's time to get on in there. It's time to get part of a group.
Yeah.
Get part of an e-group.
So good.
Hallelujah. Get part of an e-group. Get part of the sharing. Develop some relationships.
Yes,
Come
sir.
on.
Yeah.
Develop some relationships.
Come on.
As young people and older people. Develop some relationships. And for your older people, they need you.
Yes.
That's so good.
They need you. They needed that 80-year-old man to go back into Egypt. The place where he killed a man and ran from, but they needed him back in there.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to come back out of the desert.
That's so
Wow.
good.
Don't be ashamed to come back out of the desert.
Yeah.
I know I did this thing, God. I don't know if I'm good enough, but don't be ashamed to come back out of the desert. God is still calling you.
Wow.
That's good.
Man, Steve, I asked for some advice. That was a word.
Yeah, for real.
Come on. Man, no, something that I love that you said is God often puts something right in front of us, and most of the time we just check it out. And I can remember so many times where God has put the calling, the purpose over my life right in front of me, and I've just checked it out.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of goes similar to what you experienced when you were first joining this church, right, Mom? Well, I remember a specific time where I was talking to you, and just you and Dad were kind of thinking about calling E2 your home church, but you and Dad had just told me, man, I just don't know where I fit in. I don't know where I would serve. And guys, they are from Tracy, and now they are driving an hour almost every single day
Come on.
to serve. My dad, you probably see my dad playing the bass up here. You just saw her on stage worshiping. My mom was on 2 other E-teams now. And like, we never got to talk about this before, but I'm curious as to what changed.
Well, the way that we ended up here at E2 was Nathan on a Sunday was blowing up my phone. I was actually kind of nervous. I thought something had happened, but I answered and he said, Mom, I found my church.
Yeah.
And I just about dropped on my knees and said, thank you, Jesus. I gotta check this church out. And I think that it was actually the next Sunday that we came out as a family, and definitely from the time that we pulled into the parking lot, we felt something totally different. The way we were welcomed and greeted, as Steve said, we felt like family. There was an impact upon us, but right away, my husband and I, we kind of, after sitting down, we kind of, looked around and noticed, like, hey, we're kind of stand out here. We're a little older here. I said older, not old, okay? Older. Not in my 20s. I'm not in my 30s, so. But definitely, we kind of stood out, but it was okay. E2 wasn't, our church. We were here to check E2 out. It was Nate's church. This was something that we had prayed for Nathan. But every so often, we had, we'd come and, we'd visit. My girls loved coming here. We loved coming here, and the people we would meet and connect with every time we'd come and visit. But for me, sometimes, every so often, I'd come and visit. I'd look around, and any new people my age?
Come on.
And, as I look around, I'd be like, oh, I can be mom to the first row right there, but it was okay.
Yeah.
I was just visiting. This wasn't my church. Came a season a while later where we were transitioning and we felt God pulling us from Tracy. And we kept coming to E2, and we just loved coming to E2. I don't think we gave any other church any chance. But definitely, my husband and I, on our way home, sometimes we would have the conversation of, do you see yourself at E2?
Yeah.
Is this somewhere there you think we can fit in, connect? And the answer for both of us would always be, I don't know. I don't know. I remember a specific conversation I had with my husband. I suggested to him, like Nate said, he plays the bass, and I told him, I said, you can try it for the worship team.
Yeah.
I love to see you play the bass and, move around and worship. And he just about stopped, and he looked at me, and he goes, are you crazy?
Sounds exactly like him.
Yeah, are you crazy? And I'm like, no, but he's like, I'm like close to twice the age of everyone up on stage. Mm-hmm. That would look so weird, so funny. They're all talented. They don't need me. No, that's a definite no. And that just did not sit right with my spirit because I too was dealing with the same questions. Where do I fit in? Where can I serve? And what will that look like in my season now? So I told my husband, I said, we have to pray about this and we have to see what God has to say.
Yeah.
So we did. We prayed together and we both felt God telling us, you're asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
The question is not, where do I fit in? The question should be, God, where is it that you want to use me? That should be the question.
So good.
That is what changed for me, and that is what changed for my husband. Changing the I and turning it to God. Changing the focus. And I believe that there might be some of you here today, not in your 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, or older, and asking yourselves the same question: where do I fit in? What is this going to look like in this season of my life? Am I even needed here?
Yeah.
And if I can encourage you to just change that question, if you can just ask God, where is it that he wants to use you?
Yeah.
And get
So
connected.
So
Get
good.
into an e-group.
Yeah.
Get into community. It's often said here that life is not to be done alone. We all need each other.
Yeah.
So I encourage you. And with my yes, I can sit here today and testify of what God has done through that and through this church. I get to see on a weekly basis the calling that God has placed on Nathan.
Come on, somebody.
My daughters, I got to witness my daughters
Yeah.
That's so great.
give their life to Christ.
Come on. That's so great.
As a mother, that is so awesome. My daughter's boyfriend, my daughter's friends, my nieces, my nephews, they've all raised their hands and accepted Christ. You see, it's not about age. This is not about age. Psalms 92:14 says that we are all called, even at old age, to bear healthy and
Yes.
green fruit.
Yes.
Hey, that's
So
good.
ask God where he wants to use you to bear fruit and get involved and serve.
Wow, that's so
So
good.
good. So good.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that we get to do ministry as a family again, because we grew up doing ministry as a family when I was a kid, and then we moved off to college. But coming here to this church, you and Dad changing that question was allowing us now to do ministry together again. And it's just so amazing, because now I get to be the youth director to my little sister and just so many other things. And speaking of family ministry, man, this couple right here, I cannot talk enough about this couple. Come on. So this couple does family ministry at such a high level. They bring their kids with them wherever they go. They have a 17-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they were all serving, even the 4-year-old. And it's just so amazing to see that. And as someone who's young, looking to have a family in ministry, what's some advice that you can give me and maybe other families that are interested as well on how to build family and ministry by keeping God at the center of it all?
Well, man, thank you so much, Nate, for real, man. But seriously, it actually started when I was a teenager, really. I grew up in a Samoan Pentecostal AG church. Hey, church was 6 hours long on Sundays, y'all. Like, it was crazy. Hey, and that was a short day. And my mom, she prayed over us. She was like a God-fearing woman. She prayed over all her boys. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she fasted and stuff. And I actually got saved through a Bible study that me and my best friends did to this day at our high school. We did it every lunch. And during that time, God gave me a vision of what my family's going to look like.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it was a family. There was a marriage that was strong, that was going after God, that was in love with God, right? Because our love is conditional, but God's love is
Wow, come on.
unconditional,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And so with that, yeah, seriously, and raising up kids that would go after God as well with us, you know? Yeah. And so when I met Amanda.
It's Mandy.
I mean, sorry. I mean, man, when I met Mandy, my bad. Hey, when I met Mandy, it was super scary for me to actually talk to her about this. Not a lot of people know this, but we're actually a blended family. Wow. Yeah, and really looking into it, and Isaac was in the picture too, and I had to come into this as like, hey, I have to step in as a father and a future husband right away, right? And so I had to have this conversation. I was deeply in love with her. I mean, look at her, right, guys? I mean, for real. Like, I was like, come on now. And I was like, man, I have to have this conversation with her. And it was scary. You remember, babe?
Yeah, I do remember that. But if anyone saw my testimony video last week, it was around that time, and I was really far from God. So it was easy to say yes, to jump in and go after God with someone that I was in love with and going to spend the rest of my life with. So
come on.
When we got married, we really feel like with our kids that ministry starts in the home. Yeah. We are the first ones to minister to our kids. We're the first ones that get to make disciples out of them, and really living out that vision that was given to my husband. It starts with a healthy marriage. The divorce rate in the United States is 50%. Right. So the world is telling my husband and I that we have a 50-50 chance of making it. Wow. Right. But we don't worry about that statistic because we have an insurance policy on our marriage, and his name is Jesus.
Come on, hey, let's go.
And the church helps to make sure that insurance policy doesn't lapse.
Yeah.
Right, but he's not just after our marriage, he's after our kids. Just look at the mental health issues that our kids had going through the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic. You could take one look at YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and see what they're exposed to. But I mean, I love social media, but...
Hey, y'all, yeah, for real, because their Instagram is aesthetically pleasing. Y'all should check it out.
But we really do believe that when we give our kids a space to worship, it shuts down the enemy. Psalm 8 verse 2 says, he has taught infants and children to tell of his strength, silencing the enemy and those who oppose him. So when we came to E2 Church, we didn't want to feel like we were sacrificing our family for ministry or sacrificing ministry for family. And so when we went to Orange Essentials, we really encouraged Isaac to come to Orange Essentials with us and find out where he's gifted and start serving with us. And so he started out serving in eKids, and then he was called over to production. And he actually served throughout the whole pandemic. We would get up, drive him to church at 6 o'clock in the morning, drop him off, and then we'd have to go back home and watch online.
Bro, and he would come home after serving that experience, and we'd be watching, and he'd be telling us, he was like, dude, it is extremely hard following Pastor Jared with the cameras. Like, he would go one way and then he would cut the other way, and like, hey, shout out to production, because y'all make everything look so great online. Seriously, you guys do such a great job. Such a great job.
Production is awesome. And Moses, if you guys ever see him having a meltdown here at church, which is just about every weekend.
Every Sunday.
But it's because he doesn't want to leave. He absolutely loves coming to church. He would be here 7 days a week if he could.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, he comes up to us during the week and he's like, I have Jesus in my heart, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, and I hear him.
Come on, E-Kids.
Come on, E-Kids. Hey, that's E-Kids. Come on.
But the fruit from our yes to doing ministry as a family has been incredible to see what God is doing through our kids.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, our oldest son, he gave his life to Christ in this house. Like, seriously, he got baptized in this house. And not only that, he's bringing his friends, and his friends are getting baptized. I mean, like, come on. And it wasn't just because of our upbringing. It wasn't just because of what we're doing, but the people speaking into him. Jody, Nate, Josh, speaking into our son, raising them up. It's not just, it's the community here that's helping us raise our kids up.
Yeah.
It's
And
so important.
And that's why getting in an e-group is really important. When we came here, we didn't know anybody, and we started serving, and I think it was a new season of e-groups that very same day we joined. So I was like, well, let's just host an e-group. We don't know who's going to come, but we're just going to host one. And we did, and people came, and we're still friends with them to this day. It's important to have godly friends that are speaking life into your marriage, praying for your kids, checking on you when you don't show up to church.
Hey, for real. And if there's anything that we can leave you with is have a vision for your family. Have a vision for your family. You know, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Right? Come on now. And the way we walk out our vision, is that we went through OE, Orange Essentials. We figured out what our gifts were as a family unit, right? And then we joined an E-team. We serve, right? And some of my closest friends, my best friends today, is from people I serve with, you know? And then join an E-group. I got saved. Well, that lunch thing, I got saved in an e-group. And I also had Steve Small in my last e-group. And y'all saw what he did. I got that every week. Come on now. Every week, this man brought that word, you know? So it was amazing.
Yeah, and that's just amazing to hear your guys' story. And I've been able to have a kind of a little bit of a relationship with your guys' family, seeing Moses. One of my favorite things about being a volunteer here is that you're an uncle to every kid. And
Every kid.
as soon as I go into E-Kids, Uncle Nate! Like, I love it. And even with your oldest, Isaac is one of the original 4 kids we had in the youth ministry when we just first started out. And now 2 years later, he's a senior, and we have about pushing 50 kids in our youth ministry.
Come on, let's go.
Post-pandemic, everything. But it's not just that. It's been able to see Isaac grow so much in his relationship with God and wanting to be a leader in the church and inviting every single student he sees. They just told me right before this that they invited like 50 students at Leatherby's before this.
Hey, let's go.
But it's so amazing to see that. And there's so many other teenagers that have the same story. But in reality, not all teenagers are like that. Statistically speaking, this is the biggest generation, Generation Z, that is falling out of church. And it might not seem like it now, but I was almost that statistic. You know, and I grew up in church. You guys heard my mom. I grew up at 5:30 every Sunday morning, getting ready to go to church, portable church, having random people at my house every week so my parents could disciple them. Worship practice Tuesday, Bible study Wednesday, youth group Thursday, worship conference Friday. I grew up in church. Both of my grandfathers are pastors, and I would see people flood the altar as they would preach. And I saw lives transformed all around me, except when I looked in the mirror. I saw people not practice what they preach from the pulpit. And now I know we all fall short of the glory of the God, and we're all sinners. But at the time, it wrecked me. At the time, it left me with so many questions. It left me with so much pain. I remember a specific moment. I was about 12 or 13 years old that I was leading worship in our youth ministry at the church we were at, and we were at a high school, and we were in the drama room in the back with the youth ministry. And I'm on top of this 2-inch wooden stage, and my brother is playing drums to the right of me, and there's 2 more worship leaders right next to the left of me. And I remember looking out into the crowd, about 20 students with 4 tables in between them, and seeing not one hand raised, teenagers on their phone. I didn't see the presence of God at all. And matter of fact, I had never even encountered God at that moment. And so I would just think, who am I to lead people into an atmosphere of worship if I've never had an experience with God, if I've never had an encounter with God? And it was at that moment that I just looked into the crowd, I looked at my brother, and I just decided I was done. I was done with my faith. I was done with church. I was done serving. I had so many questions that no one was answering. I had so much pain that just wasn't showing, and no one knew. And so I was done. And I decided to mouth the rest of the words of the song. And after, I talked to my youth pastor and said, hey, man, I'm just not going to do this no more. I used the excuse that I was going through puberty and my voice was cracking. And I was like, you don't want a squeaker on your worship team. But it reminds me of a book in the Bible in Acts chapter 20, where Paul is passing through a town of Troas. And as he's passing through this town, he decides that he's going to preach all night. He literally says he preaches on and on all night. And so as he's preaching, there is a young man next to an open window named Eutychus.
Yeah.
And it says Eutychus becomes sleepy.
Wow.
And he ended up falling out the window and dying.
Wow.
And as I read that, I just constantly ask myself, how many young people, how many teenagers, how many young adults, how many of you are falling asleep and dying? You know, this is the ministry that I dream out when I close my eyes and I pray, the youth ministry that I dream about, the e-groups ministry that I dream about. And I always wonder, what if Eutychus knew that there was someone in the room who was going through the same pain he was going through?
Wow.
What if he knew that there was someone else in the room with the same struggles, the same questions, the same hurt? I wonder if someone had asked him to join an E-team. I wonder what if someone would ask him to join an E-group. I wonder if he would have fell asleep then.
Wow.
And this is why it is so crucial that every generation is involved at this church.
Yeah.
This is why you see teenagers at the front right here. Because when I dream about the ministry that God is doing in this church, he says no more Eutychuses, because Eutychus isn't just someone in the Bible. Eutychus is me.
Wow.
God shows me me. I get to use my story.
That's right.
I get to use my testimony.
Yeah.
So there would be no more Eutychuses. And you might be asking, well, Nate, I already fell out the window. It's too late. Well, Josh preached last week that your story isn't over. And neither was Eutychus's. So what happened after is he was lying on the ground dead. The church, in another translation, it says that they just looked at him and cried.
Wow.
But what Paul did is Paul ran to the body, he laid over the body, he embraced the body, and he spoke life over the body. And I want to be a church that can meet people where they're at, that can believe for people, that can place a call on people, that can declare life on people. You see, the church is Paul. But it's not easy.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes I find myself to the side crying over situations that I think are dead, over people that I think are dead. Just this year, my grandfather has died almost 4 times. And every day we are in question if he is going to live next. And so many times I find myself to the side and looking at my grandfather and just crying instead of speaking life over the situation. Because I need to believe that the same God who raised Eutychus from the dead, the same God that saved Steve, the same God that saved these people right here, the same God that used me is the same God that can do it for you and can change my situation with my grandfather. You see, generations change, but God stays the same.
So good.
God is the same, but we need each other. You see, Paul might have gone through something that Eutychus didn't, so he was over to speak life over him. Steve is able to speak into my situation with my grandfather because I've never experienced a loss like that. So he can speak life into that situation. We just went through the same pandemic, but do we know we went through the same problems? Does the person next to you know you're going through the same struggle? We all need each other. We need you in this church. See, I was lying dead on the floor, and this church is what brought me to life. This church is what spoke life over me. And it can do the same for you. But you got to get involved. Join an e-group. We have our e-groups launch right outside. Join our e-team. We have a great e-team. You got to get involved. One of our values here is partnership. We all need each other.